Network charity Nina Barnsley, and dad of 2 sperm donation children, Danny Roddick. Thank you for being here. So, Danny, I'll come to you first, because you know what you're talking about this. Tell us about your 2 sons, and not graphically detailed what happened.
Well, graphically isn't actually that interesting, because it was really a medical procedure. My oldest is 20 and my youngest is 18. Both boys, I say to my children, but they're young men now, and they're both born through sperm donation. I pretty much told them from day one about their genetic origins. I told my oldest son when he was a week old. He's not the next Albert Einstein or anything like that.
That's a great way to get away with it. Well, mention it young so they can't remember.
Exactly. Yeah. Practice it, try it out, you know. And if I'm being honest with you, part of that was about me getting used to actually saying the words in front of them. And I probably didn't feel that comfortable at the beginning. I feel very comfortable now. Well, I'm here in front of this audience talking about it, so obviously gone quite a journey over the years.
So how would you have felt if they'd have been able to contact biological parents earlier?
It's interesting that term you're using, biological parents.
Yeah, but it's kind of the given term, but I know...
Well, yeah, I mean, I would always say donor, and I think my children would say donor. The parent, for me, is the person who changes your nappy and, you know, is there for you on sports day or whatever. That's very much a parent for me.
OK. So we refer to them as DNA supply. Is that better?
Technically, they are. Absolutely. Look, and let's face it, I'm only here today because it has an importance, obviously. They've pretty much known from day one, really. As I said, they've kind of grown up with the information. Both of them were born prior to 2005, which means, in reality, they're probably not going to be able to find out the information, because it was 2005 where the end of anonymity happened. We have, though, started doing DNA testing. Myself, because I never knew my father, he left when I was 3, and we can't. But my oldest son and I thought it'd be a really good idea to go out and see if there's any information out there. So we have done that. OK. Any results from that you want to mention? I actually found a first cousin. First cousin in Florida. I'm 25% Portuguese, which I didn't know about that. Still supporting England in the World Cup, don't worry. Which was great. My youngest son found nothing. Oh, really? My oldest son, sorry, found nothing. But recently, a couple of weeks ago, he found a second cousin who lives in Wisconsin in America, and he's trying to trace and find out some information. And to be honest, at the time, I thought the donor was a bit of a threat to me. I don't feel that now. And if I met him, I'd probably like to shake his hand and say thank you, because, you know, my sons are the best thing that's ever happened in my life, really. Yeah, although we all know what he's done with that hand. Well, I could not mention it. I feel like I couldn't. I don't know. But so the possible changes to these laws, would this be a good move? And if so, why has it not happened before?
It would be a good move, I think, at least to give that as an option for people. So under the current framework, as Danny said, the law changed in 2005. So since then, no donor can be anonymous. They have to agree to be identifiable once a child reaches 18. But what's happened is those families are actually curious earlier than 18, so some of the children are very curious, parents can be curious. I imagine that the donors are also quite curious about what's happened to their donation and how those children are, hoping that they'll be like Danny's lovely sons. I think it's hard to picture the time in 2005. It was pretty revolutionary, actually, the move to ending anonymity. That was a massive change. And so it's not surprising that there were limits put on that. And I think just as it's unfolded over the years, it's clear that actually people would like a little bit more flexibility, and the current framework doesn't allow any flexibility. It's 18 or nothing, or you pursue it down a DNA testing route, which is kind of not what has been agreed, let's say. Yeah. Now, we've not got into the details in the setup of this story, but some people might be hearing it and thinking somehow it means you could be tracked down. There's a lot of agreement on all sides for this to actually happen, isn't there? Yeah, it's all consensual. So obviously the donor would be counselled, it would be made clear to them, as they are now. So now they're told, when you're 18, when the child reaches 18, they may be interested and may ask for contact information. They may not. So yes, under the new proposal, all donors would be alerted to the fact that that contact might be much sooner.
So if this was available to you earlier, do you think you might have pursued it? Because it was interesting you said that originally you might have considered the donor to be a threat, but then you realised it's not actually a threat. At what stage did that happen in your mind where you made your peace with that? And then would you have pursued trying to actually track down, I've used that phrase, even though it's not what this would have been about,
it's all right.
finding contact with that donor?
I mean, for me, it was never be about me. It's always going to be about my children. So, and as I said, I've got 2 kids with very different views. The oldest one would love to find out. The youngest one has no interest whatsoever. I suppose I've always been encouraging to them to try and find out more information if they wanted to. And I suppose it's really important for me that I looked as though I was happy. Well, not just looked, I was happy with that process. I don't know if there was like a day where suddenly it wasn't all right and the next day it was, oh, this is all fine. It's just been a gradual process over the years, to be honest. So, yeah, today I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right.
And even though I totally get the point that it would be about the child's wants and if they have the desire, but would it answer any questions in your mind? Because you must also wonder, even though it's not about your desire to find out, you might have a desire to find out information.
I do, but I think it always has to be child-centred. But look, I think I said I don't know my biological father, for want of a better term. He left when I was 3. And I have a desire. I mean, my mum ripped up all the photos of him, unfortunately, so I don't even know what he looks like. And I would love it, actually, if one day I could meet him and just have a conversation. And, you know, if I have that kind of desire, well, why shouldn't my children? That, for me, feels natural, you know, and I want to be there and help them in that process if it happens.
Yeah. And then, because I don't know how many people, no, I'm phrasing this badly, how many children a donor would end up donating to, in a sense. I don't know what kind of stats. Your average person who partakes of this, do they end up having... Would they, like 18 years from now, suddenly get 26 people getting in touch?
26 is unlikely. So when the law changed, not only did donors have to agree to be identifiable, but also limits were placed on how many times their donation could be used. So there is currently in the UK a 10-family limit. So it's possible that in those families there might be more than one child, but there's probably unlikely to be maybe more than 15 children born from one person's donation, and significantly fewer if it was egg donation.
And do you think there's any group that would disagree with this potential change of legislation?
Yes, I think it's possible that there will be some people who would like a much... It does blur the boundary. I think, so Danny's hinted at it, that a lot of people, if they're having to go down this route, it's often not a first choice. And so it can be quite difficult to even contemplate the idea of using a sperm donor or an egg donor. And that contemplation may be made even more complicated if you're thinking, OK, this is now going to be a person who could arrive in my family's life at any point. Whereas at least the 18, you sort of can put a nice boundary and say, OK, that I've got a long time to wait before I need to really sort of think about this person.
But then even so, under the age of 18, even if it's the child who wants to find out more, would you still require the parents' approval to actually contact
it would be
donor?
Parent-led under the new model, because obviously they would all be children. So it would be up to parents to decide when they wanted to find out more information about the donor and what that would look like, whether that would just be maybe some information, medical information, whether that would be actually meeting. I mean, this is sort of all uncharted territory, and it will be interesting to see what unfolds.
I mean, difficult to say no. You weren't in this situation, but we can kind of put our heads there that you'd have the right to say, no, let's not make contact yet. But could you have said no if your children were actually asking for that information?
I suspect I would have just been led by what my kids want. I mean, look, you know, I said they're 20 and they're 18, but I rang them both and said, is it OK if I come on this tonight, to be honest with you? Well, because... it's not just affecting me, it's affecting them, isn't it? You know, and I mean, my son loves the fact that his picture's going to be on telly, so he was very happy for me to do that. But do you know what I mean? I think it really has to be led by them, whatever my views are. people talk about it being a seesaw, and it kind of starts with the information being led by the parent, but eventually that seesaw tips in balance the kids. Right?
And I know what you mean. You've got to be nice to your kids. They're the ones who pick the care home. So you've got to be nice. And thank you very much, Nina Barnsley and Danny Rudder. Thank you for